5 a.m. in Malibu has a sound. It is not silence, exactly. It is a rhythmic, heavy hush where the Pacific Ocean meets the sand, a low-frequency hum that vibrates right in your chest. I stood on the travertine balcony of my master bedroom, wrapping my silk robe tighter against the morning chill. In my hand was a cup of black coffee, the steam rising and twisting into the gray dawn light. Below me, the property stretched out in perfect geometric harmony. The infinity pool was a sheet of glass, reflecting the fading stars. The Japanese Zen garden, my personal project for the last 3 years, was raked into precise, concentric circles around the black stones. And there was the koi pond. My pride and joy. I could just make out the flashes of orange and white moving beneath the surface, my imported koi, some of which were older than I was. Everything here, from the $3 million price tag to the specific shade of slate gray on the roof tiles, was mine. My name is Mallory. I am 36 years old, and I am a forensic accountant. My job is to find things that people try very hard to hide. I track embezzled funds through shell companies. I find the extra zero on a balance sheet that shouldn't be there. I trace the digital footprints of greed. It is a job that requires obsessive attention to detail, a lack of emotion, and a craving for absolute order. That craving for order is why I bought this house. It wasn't just a flex. It wasn't just about the money, although I had made plenty of it by working 80-hour weeks for 15 years. This house was a fortress. It was a physical barrier between me and the chaos of the world. More specifically, it was a barrier between me and the chaos of my upbringing. I took a sip of coffee, letting the bitterness wake me up. I walked back inside, my bare feet silent on the heated floors. I passed the dresser where I kept a small, framed photo hidden in the bottom drawer, underneath my winter socks. It was a picture of Nana June. She was the only person in my family who had ever looked at me and seen a person, not a utility. She died when I was 14, and with her, the only warmth in my life had evaporated. My phone buzzed on the marble kitchen island. I frowned. No one called me at 5 in the morning. My clients knew better, and I didn't have friends who would call for an emergency. I looked at the screen. The name flashing there made my stomach turn over, a physical reaction I hadn't been able to train myself out of in 2 decades. Dad. I stared at it. The phone vibrated against the stone, a harsh, intrusive sound in my perfect sanctuary. I debated letting it go to voicemail. But Walter, my father, didn't call unless he wanted something. And if I didn't answer, he would keep calling until he got it. I swiped right. "Hello, Dad," I said, my voice steady. Mallory, his voice was rough, likely from a night of drinking cheap scotch. There was no good morning, no how are you. Just the tone of a man who expects to be obeyed. "We have a situation. You need to clear your schedule for next Tuesday." I leaned against the counter, gripping my coffee mug. "I have a deposition on Tuesday. I can't clear anything." "What's going on?" "It's your sister," he said. "Courtney. She's in a bit of a bind. Travis made some bad calls with his investments. They're losing the house in Riverside." I felt a flash of irritation, but not surprise. Courtney, my younger sister, the golden child, had been in a bind since she learned to walk. Travis, her husband, was a man who thought buying lottery tickets was a retirement strategy. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it in the polite, distant way you offer condolences to a stranger. "I can send over the number for a good bankruptcy attorney." "We don't need a lawyer, Mallory," my father snapped. "We need a house." The air in the kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. I felt the walls of my fortress trembling. "They need a place to stay while they get back on their feet. Your mother and I are going to go with them to help with the kids. Your place is big enough." "What is it, 5 bedrooms?" "You're one person. It's ridiculous for you to have all that space anyway." "No," I said. The word was automatic. "Absolutely not. I work from home half the time. I have sensitive client files. I can't have 4 adults and 2 children living here. It's not a request, Mallory, a new voice cut in. My mother. Deidre. She must have been listening on speakerphone. Her voice was sharp, like jagged glass. We are family. Family helps family. I have helped, I said, my heart rate climbing. I paid for Courtney's wedding. I paid for Bentley's tuition when he got kicked out of public school. I have given you thousands of dollars that I never saw again. I am not turning my home into a hostel. There was a silence on the other end. It was heavy, pregnant with malice. Mallory, my mother said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous purr. Don't force us to be unpleasant. We really don't want to have to call the ethics board at your firm. My hand froze. The coffee mug was suddenly heavy as lead. What? I whispered. You know what, my father said. The 2005 incident. The hit and run. We still have the tape, Mallory. We still have the dashcam footage from the neighbor's car that shows who was really in the driver's seat before the switch. The blood drained from my face. I was 16 years old again, standing on a rainy road, flashing blue lights reflecting in the puddles. Courtney, drunk and crying, begging me to take the blame because she was 18 and would go to real prison, while I was a minor and would just get probation. My parents, forcing me into the driver's seat. Do it for your sister. Don't be selfish. I had taken the fall. I had a juvenile record that was sealed. But if they released proof that I had lied to the police, that I had obstructed justice, my CPA license, my fraud examiner certification, my entire career would be incinerated. In my line of work, integrity is the only currency. If I was proven to be a liar, I was finished. You wouldn't, I choked out. Tuesday, my father said. Have the guest rooms ready. And Mallory? We'll be taking the master suite. Your mother's sciatica is acting up, she needs the ocean view. The line went dead. I stood in the silence of my kitchen for a long time. The sun had fully risen now, flooding the room with light, but I felt like I was standing in a dark, cold tunnel. They were coming. The invasion was real. Panic, hot and frantic, tried to claw its way up my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my $2,000 coffee machine through the window. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was Mallory the machine. I was the girl who didn't cry when she fell off her bike because no one would pick her up anyway. I took a deep breath, counting to 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4. Box breathing. A technique I learned to deal with panic attacks in college. I had 48 hours. I moved into action. It was muscle memory. When a storm is coming, you batten down the hatches. First, the valuables. I went to my home office, a sanctuary within a sanctuary. I pulled back the Persian rug in the corner to reveal the floor safe. I punched in the 12-digit code. Inside were my passports, my birth certificate, hard drives containing encrypted client data, and the few pieces of jewelry I actually cared about, mostly Nana June's old brooches. I took everything of value from the rest of the house. The limited edition watches I collected? In the safe. The cash I kept on hand for emergencies? In the safe. My external hard drives with my personal journals? In the safe. I went through the house with the eyes of an auditor. What could be broken? What could be stolen? I moved my collection of rare first edition books from the living room shelves to the locked storage closet in the basement. I took the expensive Japanese whiskey off the bar cart and replaced it with cheap supermarket blends, pouring the good liquid into unmarked decanters that I hid in the laundry room cupboard behind the bleach. I felt sick the entire time. I felt like I was stripping my home of its soul, hiding the evidence of my success because my family treated success like a resource to be mined. By Monday night, the house looked different. It was still beautiful, still expensive, but it felt sterile. It felt like a staged home, not my home. I sat on the floor of my office, the only room that had a heavy-duty lock on the door. I looked around. I knew, with a sinking certainty, that giving them a room wasn't going to be enough. They weren't coming to visit. They were coming to consume. I looked at the text message Courtney had sent me an hour ago. No greeting. Just, make sure the pool heater is on. The kids like it at 85 degrees. I didn't reply. I just stared at the phone, feeling the old, familiar shame of the scapegoat. The one who cleans up the mess. The one who pays the bills. The one who takes the blame. But then, I looked at the floor safe again. I thought about what I did for a living. I caught criminals. I caught liars. I caught people who thought they were smarter than the system. My family thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought I was compliant because I was afraid. They were right about the fear. But they were wrong about the weakness. Tuesday arrived with the subtlety of a car crash. I was in the middle of a Zoom call with a client in Zurich when I heard the grinding of gears. I muted my microphone and looked out the window. A massive, beat-up U-Haul truck was backing into my driveway. The driver, my brother-in-law, Travis, was seemingly incapable of using mirrors. I watched in horror as the rear tire of the truck crushed my meticulously manicured lavender bushes. The sound of crunching branches was audible even through the double-paned glass. "Excuse me for a moment," I told the client, my voice tight. "I have a delivery." I ended the call and walked downstairs. My stomach was a knot of acid. By the time I opened the front door, the circus had disembarked. Courtney was stepping out of her white SUV. She was wearing oversized designer sunglasses and a tracksuit that probably cost more than my first car. She looked around my property not with admiration, but with a critical, appraisal-like gaze. "Finally," she said, pulling down her sunglasses. "The gate code didn't work. We had to wait for 2 minutes." "I changed the code for you," I said stiffly. "I texted it to you." "I don't read texts while I'm driving, Mallory." "Safety first," she said, dismissively tossing her keys to me as if I were the valet. "Grab the bags from the trunk, will you?" Before I could respond, the back door of the SUV flew open. Bentley, my 8-year-old nephew, and Kaylee, my 5-year-old niece, burst out like cannonballs. "Pool! Pool! Pool!" Bentley screamed, sprinting past me. He was wearing muddy sneakers. He ran straight into my foyer, onto the cream-colored marble. "Bentley, shoes off." I called out, but he ignored me. Travis climbed out of the truck cab. He was wearing a stained tank top and chewing gum with his mouth open. The smell hit me before he even got close, a mix of stale cigarette smoke, sweat, and cheap body spray. "Yo, Mal," he grunted. "Where do you want the couch?" I blinked. "The couch? My house is fully furnished, Travis." "Yeah, but your couch looks uncomfortable," he said, gesturing to the truck. "We brought our sectional. It's real leather. And the 70-inch TV. And the recliners." My parents pulled up then, in their sedan. Deidre stepped out, clutching her lower back dramatically. Walter walked straight past me, looked at the crushed lavender, and frowned. "You really need to widen this driveway, Mallory. It's a tight squeeze." "Hello to you too, Dad," I said. "Where's the master suite?" my mother asked, bypassing greetings entirely. "I need to lie down." The drive was murder on my nerves. "Upstairs, first door on the right," I said, feeling a piece of my soul wither. I moved my things to the guest wing. "Good," she said, marching inside. For the next 4 hours, I watched my sanctuary be dismantled. They didn't just move in, they took over. Travis and the movers he hired, 2 guys who looked like they were paid in beer, hauled a massive, peeling, brown leather sectional into my minimalist living room. They shoved my Italian designer sofa against the wall, scratching the paint. They unpacked boxes everywhere. Not suitcases, boxes. Kitchen appliances, blenders, toaster ovens, stacks of chipped plates. They started rearranging my kitchen, shoving my expensive spices aside to make room for boxes of sugary cereal and instant mac and cheese. "Why do you have so much weird food?" Courtney asked, holding up a jar of saffron. "Do you have any normal salt? Like, the white kind?" "It's in the pantry," I said, trying to rescue my saffron. By sunset, my house looked like a frat house after a party. There were cardboard boxes in the hallways. The TV was blasting cartoons at a volume that made the windows rattle. The smell of frying grease, my mother was making fried chicken in my skillet, permeated the open-concept living space. I retreated to the guest room, well, the office that I was now sleeping in. I sat on the fold-out cot I had bought from Amazon. The mattress was thin. I could feel the metal bar digging into my back. I looked at the ceiling. 2 weeks, I told myself. You can survive anything for 2 weeks. Day 3. The 2-week lie was already starting to crumble. I woke up to the sound of screaming. Not fear, tantrums. Kaylee wanted ice cream for breakfast. I walked out to the kitchen, wearing my noise-canceling headphones around my neck. The scene was apocalyptic. There was a carton of milk left open on the counter. Cereal was crushed into the floor tiles. Sticky fingerprints were on the stainless steel fridge. My mother was sitting at my dining table, my mahogany table imported from Bali, drinking coffee. She didn't use a coaster. I stared at the wet ring forming on the wood. "Morning," she said, not looking up from her iPad. "We need more eggs. And Travis says the internet is slow in the media room. You should upgrade your plan." "I have fiber optic business class internet, Mom," I said, grabbing a rag to wipe the milk. "It's not slow." "Well, he can't stream his games." "Fix it." I gritted my teeth. "Where is Dad?" "He's with Travis. They're looking at the garage. Your father thinks you could convert it into an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. For the future." I stopped wiping. "For whose future?" She finally looked up, her eyes cold and hard. "Don't start, Mallory. We are just making suggestions to improve the property value." I grabbed an apple and walked out to the patio. I needed air. I needed to see something beautiful. I walked toward the Zen garden. And then I stopped. Travis was sitting on one of the meditation stones. He was smoking a cigarette. I had explicitly told them, no smoking on the property. High fire risk. He flicked the ash. It landed in the raked white sand, a gray scar on the perfection. "Travis!" I snapped. "No smoking. The brush is dry." He jumped, then rolled his eyes. "Relax, Mal. It's sand. Sand doesn't burn." "It's not just sand, I cut myself off." There was no point explaining Zen aesthetics to a man wearing cargo shorts in a multi-million-dollar villa. "Just put it out. Please." He crushed the cigarette butt against the stone, my imported river stone, and left the butt there. "You're so uptight. You need to get laid or something." I turned around and walked back inside before I picked up a rock and threw it at him. It happened on Saturday. The 5th day of the occupation. I had spent the morning at my actual office in the city, just to escape. I drove home around 2 p.m., dreading the arrival. When I pulled into the driveway, it was strangely quiet. No music. No screaming. I walked through the house. "Hello?" No answer. The sliding glass doors to the backyard were open. I walked out. I saw them all gathered around the koi pond. My parents, Courtney, Travis, and the kids. They were looking at the water. A cold dread seized my heart. I ran. "What's going on?" I demanded, pushing past Travis. Then I saw it. The water, usually crystal clear, was cloudy and foamy. And floating on the surface, belly up, was Shogun. My largest, oldest koi. A fish that had cost me $4,000. A fish that I hand-fed. He was dead. And next to the pond, Bentley was holding a bottle of dish soap. An empty bottle of Dawn dish soap. Look. Bentley giggled. Bubbles. I made a bubble bath for the fishies. I felt the world tilt. My vision actually tunnel-visioned. I dropped to my knees at the edge of the pond, reaching out to the dead fish, as if I could revive it. He put soap in the pond, I whispered. My voice was trembling so hard I could barely speak. You put soap in the pond. It was an accident, Courtney said quickly. She didn't sound sorry. She sounded defensive. He was just playing. He didn't know. He's 8 years old. I screamed, standing up. The sound tore out of my throat, raw and ugly. He knows what soap is. You killed him. You killed Shogun. Oh my God, stop being dramatic, Courtney scoffed. It's a fish, Mallory. A fish. We can buy you a goldfish at PetSmart to replace it. A goldfish? I stared at her. That was a high-grade Japanese koi. It's worth more than your car, Courtney. See, my father cut in, stepping between us. This is what happens when you care more about money than family. You're screaming at a child over a fish. You should be ashamed of yourself. I should be ashamed? I looked at them. My mother was shaking her head in disappointment. Travis was snickering. He was just trying to clean them, my mother said. It was sweet, really. You're scaring him. I looked at Bentley. He wasn't scared. He was smirking. He knew he was untouchable. I looked at my dead fish. I looked at the cigarette but still in the Zen garden. I looked at the ring of water on my table. Something inside me broke. But it wasn't the kind of break that leads to tears. It was the kind of break that happens when a steel cable snaps. It was a clean, sharp severance. The fear of the blackmail evaporated. The desire to please them vanished. The hope that they would ever love me died, right there floating next to Shogun. I looked at my father. You're right, I said. My voice was suddenly very calm. Terrifyingly calm. I'm sorry. I overreacted. They blinked. They hadn't expected that. It's just a fish, I repeated. Let's go inside. I'll order pizza for dinner. I walked back into the house, leaving them victorious by the pond. They thought they had broken me. They thought I had finally accepted my place as the doormat. They had no idea. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the auditor. And the audit had just begun. That night, I didn't sleep. I worked. My family assumed that because I was a boring accountant, I was technologically illiterate. They didn't know that my house was smarter than they were. I had a server room in the basement that ran the entire property. Security cameras were obvious on the exterior, but inside? Inside, I had sensors. I sat in my locked office, my headphones on, and opened the dashboard for my home automation system. I activated the nanny mode. The smoke detectors in the living room, kitchen, and master bedroom weren't just smoke detectors. They were high-fidelity audio recorders. I had installed them years ago, not for family, but because I traveled often and wanted to ensure house sitters weren't throwing parties. I pulled up the live audio feed from the living room. It was 11 p.m. I could hear the clinking of glasses. My father and Travis were drinking the cheap whiskey I had left out, thinking it was the good stuff. This is the life, huh? Travis's voice came through crystal clear. I could get used to this view. Don't get too comfortable yet, my father said. We have to play this right. She's weak, Walter, my mother's voice chimed in. Did you see her today? She apologized to us after the brat killed her fish. She's terrified of the tape. Good, Walter grunted. But we can't stay here forever as guests. We need security. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart pounding in my ears. What did that mean? So, what's the plan? Travis asked. The bankruptcy hearing is in 3 weeks. If they see I have no assets, they seize the truck, they seize everything. That's why we need Mallory to co-sign the consolidation loan, Walter said. But not just a small one. We need to leverage the equity in this house. I gasped silently. This house had over $2 million in equity. She won't sign that, Travis said. That puts her on the hook for my debt. She will if she thinks it's the only way to get us to leave, my mother said. Her voice was so casual, so calculating. We tell her that if she helps us buy a new place, a nice place, maybe over in Hidden Hills, we will hand over the tape and never bother her again. And if she still says no? Then we go nuclear, my father said. We release the tape. She goes to jail. We petition for conservatorship because she's mentally unstable. Look at how she obsesses over those fish and rocks. If we get power of attorney, we control the assets. I sat back in my chair, trembling. They weren't just mooching. They were plotting a hostile takeover. Conservatorship. That was the nuclear option. They wanted to Britney Spears me. They wanted to declare me insane so they could control my $3 million estate. I looked at the recording software. Rec. The little red dot was blinking. Keep talking, I thought. Please, keep talking. The next 2 days, I played the part of the beaten dog perfectly. I cooked them dinner. I cleaned up Bentley's messes without complaining. I let Courtney borrow my car. I needed them to feel safe. Complacency breeds mistakes. On Thursday night, the garbage truck was scheduled to come early Friday morning. At 2 a.m., dressed in black sweats, I crept out the side door to the service alley where the bins were kept. I wasn't above digging through trash. In my first year as a junior auditor, I had found a crumpled receipt in a CEO's trash can that proved he was laundering money through a fake catering company. Trash tells the truth. I opened the bin. It smelled of rotting chicken and diapers. I put on latex gloves and started digging. I found empty liquor bottles. I found scratch-off lottery tickets, hundreds of dollars worth. So much for being broke. Then, at the bottom of a bag from the master bedroom bathroom, I found it. Shredded paper. But it wasn't cross-shredded. It was strip-shredded. My parents were cheap, they bought a cheap shredder. I grabbed the bag of paper strips and ran back to my office. For the next 4 hours, I sat on the floor with scotch tape and tweezers. It was a puzzle. A tedious, maddening puzzle. But I was good at puzzles. I pieced together 3 documents. The first was a letter from a loan shark in Vegas. A man named Vinny. Travis didn't just owe the bank, he owed dangerous people $50,000. That explained the urgency. The second document was a printout of my bank account balances. They had somehow found an old statement I missed. There were notes in my father's handwriting in the margins: liquid cash, $200,000. Retirement, $450,000. Can we access? The third document made my blood run cold. It was a photocopy of an old letter. The handwriting was shaky but elegant. It was Nana June's handwriting. It was dated 2 weeks before she died, 22 years ago. It read, "Walter, I am disappointed in your constant requests for money. The trust one set up for Mallory is for her education and her future, not for your gambling or your wife's vanity. I have updated the terms with Mr. Henderson. You are not to touch it." I stared at the taped together strips. Trust? I never had a trust fund. My parents told me Nana died broke. They told me there was nothing left but debts. I paid for college with student loans. I worked 3 jobs. If there was a trust, where did it go? Friday morning. I called in sick to work. I have a migraine, I told my mother in the kitchen. I'm going to stay in my room with the lights off. Good, she said, eating a bagel. More quiet for us. As soon as they were distracted by the TV, I slipped out the back window of the office, climbed the fence, and got into my car which I had parked down the street the night before. I drove 2 hours inland to San Bernardino County, where Nana June had lived and died. I needed the probate records. The county clerk's office was a dusty, fluorescent-lit purgatory. I pulled a ticket and waited for 40 minutes. When I finally got to the window, the clerk was a tired-looking woman named Brenda. I need to see the probate file for June Miller, deceased 2002, I said. Those are archived in the basement, Brenda sighed. Takes 3 days to request. I put on my best desperate granddaughter face. I also slid a Starbucks gift card, which I kept for these exact situations, onto the counter. Please, Brenda. I'm writing a family history for my dad's birthday. It would mean so much. Brenda looked at the card. She looked at me. Give me 20 minutes. When she came back, she had a thick manila folder. I took it to a corner table and opened it. My hands were shaking. I scanned through the legalese. Death certificate. List of assets. And then, the distribution list. Beneficiary, Mallory Miller. Amount, $450,000. Held in trust until age 25. $450,000. In 2002. With compound interest, that would be worth over $1 million today. I flipped the page. There was a document titled Waiver of Beneficiary Rights. It stated that Mallory Miller, age 18, voluntarily released the funds to the executors, Walter and Deidre Miller, for family hardship. There was a signature at the bottom. Mallory Miller. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine. It had the same loop on the M. But then I looked at the date next to the signature. July 14, 2007. I closed my eyes. July 14, 2007. I was 20 years old. I was a junior in college. And on that specific date, I was in a math camp in Colorado. I had the photos to prove it. I was physically 1,000 miles away from the notary public in San Bernardino who stamped this. My parents didn't just steal my future. They forged my signature to do it. I drove straight to my firm's headquarters in downtown LA. I didn't care that I was sick. I needed the lab. I went to the document analysis room. I scanned the photocopy of the forgery I had made at the clerk's office. Then, I scanned a sample of my mother's handwriting from a birthday card she had sent me, one of the few. I ran the software. Handwriting comparative analysis. The computer did in seconds what the human eye takes hours to do. It measured the pen pressure, the stroke angle, the spacing. Match probability, 99.8%. My mother had forged my signature. But I needed more than a computer readout. I needed a witness. I called Loretta. Loretta was a shark of a lawyer who I had helped on a massive embezzlement case last year. She owed me. Loretta, I said when she answered. I need you to look into a notary public named Sarah Jenkins. She notarized a forged document in 2007. On it, Loretta said. But Mallory? If you're going after your parents, you need to know, the statute of limitations on fraud is tricky. They can claim you knew about it and just forgot. You need proof of fraudulent concealment. I have proof, I said, thinking of the shredded letter. But I need the nail in the coffin. There was one name mentioned in Nana's will as a secondary executor, but she had been removed by my father, Elizabeth Higgins. Nana's best friend. I searched for her. Betty Higgins. 89 years old. Living in a retirement community in Pasadena. I drove there. It was late afternoon now. Mrs. Higgins was sitting in a wheelchair in the garden, knitting. When I walked up, she squinted at me. Mallory, she whispered. Hi, Mrs. Higgins, I said, crouching down. Do you remember me? You look just like June, she said, her eyes tearing up. I've been waiting for you. Waiting for me? Your grandmother, she said, her voice trembling with age. She knew your father was greedy. She knew he would try to take the money. She gave me a letter. She said, if Walter takes it all, and if Mallory ever comes looking, give her this. She reached into her knitting bag. From a zipped pocket, she pulled out a yellowed envelope. I opened it. It wasn't just a letter. It was a confession. Nana June had written down everything. Walter has threatened to cut me off from my grandchildren if I don't give him control of the accounts. I am signing this under duress. My true intent is for Mallory to have the house and the savings. Why didn't you give this to me sooner? I asked gently. Your father told me you hated us, Mrs. Higgins said sadly. He told me you wanted nothing to do with the family. He threatened to sue me if I contacted you. I held the letter to my chest. This was it. This was the proof that the theft was premeditated. This was the proof of concealment. Mrs. Higgins, I said. How would you like to come to a party? I returned home Friday evening. I walked in the door, and the energy in the house was tense. They were waiting for me to crack. I put on the performance of a lifetime. I let my shoulders slump. I let my eyes look red and puffy. I walked into the living room where they were watching TV. I can't do this anymore, I said softly. My father muted the TV. Can't do what? The fighting, I said. The fear. You win. I don't want to lose my license. I don't want the tape released. My mother smiled. It was the smile of a predator who just felt the trap snap shut. Oh, honey. We don't want to hurt you. We just want what's fair. I'll sign the papers, I said. I'll co-sign the consolidation loan. We can use the equity in the house to pay off Travis's debts and get you guys set up in a new place. Travis pumped his fist. Yes. I knew you weren't heartless, Mel. But, I added. I have one condition. What? Walter asked suspiciously. I want to do this right. If I'm helping you, I want the world to know we're a united family. I want to host a dinner party. A gala. Next Saturday. A party? Courtney frowned. Why? Because, I lied smoothly. I want to introduce Courtney and Travis to my network. If Travis is going to start a new business, he needs investors. My neighbors are angel investors. My boss is looking for new projects. Let me set you up for success. I saw the greed flash in their eyes. Vanity was their weakness. They didn't just want my money, they wanted my status. They wanted to be the rich, successful family they pretended to be. That sounds like a wonderful idea, my mother said, fluffing her hair. A proper introduction to society. Great, I said. I'll handle everything. You just invite anyone you want to impress. I spent the next week planning the execution. I hired caterers. I ordered expensive wine. I made the house look spectacular. But the most important part was the guest list. I invited my boss, the senior partner at the accounting firm. I told him I was giving a presentation on family trust fraud and wanted his opinion. He thought it was a work event. I invited the branch manager of the bank where my parents were trying to file the fraudulent loan application. I invited the HOA president, Mrs. Gable, the biggest gossip in Malibu. I invited 2 uniformed police officers, friends of a friend, under the guise of private security for the high-profile guests. And, of course, I arranged for a private medical transport to bring Mrs. Higgins. My family was busy buying new clothes with my credit card, which I let them steal, tracking every purchase as more evidence. They were preening. They were arrogant. Friday night. The eve of the gala. I was in the kitchen, prepping the hors d'oeuvres. Travis walked in. He was drunk again. He leaned against the counter, invading my personal space. You know, he slurred. You're not so bad, Mallory. Once we get this money, maybe I'll let you stay in the guest house. You'd make a good maid. He laughed at his own joke. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had invaded my home, killed my fish, and treated me like dirt. You should get some sleep, Travis, I said, smiling. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. Huge, he grinned. We're gonna be rich. I went back to my office. I opened the safe. I took out the hard drive containing the audio recordings, the video of the soap incident, the forensic handwriting analysis, and the scanned letters from Nana. I loaded everything into a PowerPoint presentation. I titled the file, The Gift. I slept like a baby that night. The living room was full. 30 people. Champagne flutes clinking. Soft jazz playing. My family looked the part. Courtney was wearing a sequined gown, bought with my money. My father was wearing a tuxedo. They were charming the neighbors, spinning lies about their investments and estates. I waited until 8 p.m. I walked to the fireplace, where I had set up a large projector screen. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, tapping a spoon against my glass. "If I could have your attention." The room quieted. My parents beamed at me, expecting their victory lap. "I want to thank you all for coming," I said. "Family is complicated. It requires sacrifice. It requires trust. And tonight, I want to show you exactly what my family has done to get here." "Here, here," my father shouted, raising his glass. "I prepared a little slideshow," I said. "A walk down memory lane." I pressed the remote. The first slide appeared. It wasn't a family photo. It was a police report. 2005 hit-and-run investigation. But next to it was a video file. I clicked play. It was the neighbor's dashcam footage I had paid a private investigator to track down years ago, just in case. It showed clearly, undeniably, Courtney stumbling out of the driver's seat and my father shoving me into it. The room gasped. "What is this?" Courtney shrieked. "Turn it off." "This," I said, my voice projecting clearly, "is the blackmail material my parents have used to control me for 20 years. But as you can see, I wasn't the driver. Courtney was." I clicked the next slide. The forensic analysis of the forged signature. The bank documents showing the withdrawal of the trust fund. The side-by-side handwriting comparison. "And this," I pointed, "is the $450,000 theft my parents committed against me in 2007. My father lunged toward the projector. "Stop this. She's crazy. She's off her meds." The two security guards, the police officers, stepped forward, blocking him. "Sit down, sir," one of them said. I clicked the next slide. It was a video from 3 days ago. The nanny cam footage. It showed Walter and Travis sitting at this very table, laughing about how they were going to bleed her dry and then put her in a nut house. The silence in the room was absolute. The bank manager looked horrified. The HOA president had her hand over her mouth. And finally, I said, "A special guest." The back door opened. Mrs. Higgins was wheeled in by her nurse. "Betty," my mother whispered, her face draining of color. You're alive?" "I am," Mrs. Higgins said, her voice shaking but loud. "And I have the letter, Deidre. The one June wrote. The one you thought you burned." She held up the yellow envelope. I turned to my family. They were huddled together, looking small, pathetic, and terrified. "The police officers here," I said, "have already been given copies of all this evidence. The fraud. The forgery. The conspiracy to commit theft. They will be taking statements now." I looked at Courtney. "You wanted a house? You have 10 minutes to pack your trash bags and get out of mine. If you are not off my property by 8:30, I am pressing charges for trespassing." "You can't do this." Courtney screamed, tears streaming down her face, real tears this time. We have nowhere to go. We have kids. You should have thought about that before you killed my fish, I said coldly. And before you tried to steal my life. Mallory, please, my father begged, his arrogance gone. We're your parents. No, I said. You're my first bad investment. And I'm liquidating. The exit was ugly. The neighbors watched as the Golden family dragged their boxes out to the U-Haul in their evening gowns and tuxedos. The police took my father and Travis into separate cars for questioning regarding the bank fraud. Mrs. Higgins held my hand as they left. She would be proud of you, she whispered. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was total. My parents were charged with grand larceny and fraud. To stay out of prison, they had to sell their house in Riverside and liquidate their retirement accounts to pay me back the trust fund money, plus interest. Travis went to jail for the unrelated loan shark debts and fraud. Courtney had to move into a one-bedroom apartment and get a job as a receptionist. I used the money I recovered, over $1 million, to start a scholarship fund in Nana June's name for students who have been cut off by their families. I restored my house. I fixed the lavender bushes. I bought new koi fish. 6 months later, I was sitting on my balcony, drinking coffee. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. I knew it was probably my mother, calling from a payphone or a burner, begging for money. I looked at the screen. I looked at the ocean. I pressed block. I took a sip of coffee. The silence was back. And this time it was perfect. So, am I the asshole for waiting until my family was comfortable, inviting all their friends, and then destroying them publicly with a PowerPoint presentation? Or was it exactly what they deserved? I'd love to hear what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have gone nuclear like I did? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We post new stories every day. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes, the best revenge is living well, and keeping the receipts.